All right, Werewolves. A film about Wesley, a former soldier who has to protect his family when a supermoon anomaly that turns humans into werewolves rises again. We open with Wesley, played by Frank Grillo, helping his sister-in-law, Amy, and her daughter, Emma, prepare her house for the supermoon event that is in the fashion of the Purge. We then meet the dickhead neighbor, Cody, who is shooting his high-powered rounds in front of the lawn. Wesley gets annoyed and confronts Cody about this. Here's where we find out that they used to serve together in the military. Cody is super amped about killing werewolves so much that he wrote werewolf killers on his flak jacket. Keep this in mind because it's going to be important later. Meanwhile, back at the lab, the scientists have developed what they believe is a cure for the transformation, and they use volunteers to run the tests on. As the supermoon approaches, they suit up in these dumbass hazmat suits that's blacked out, so I guess they're not exposed to the moon, to administer the drug to the volunteers. And for some reason, these suits have Iron Man HUDs. Like, what the fuck? But anyway, the drug seems to work, but only for an hour, and the exposed volunteers transform. They wreak havoc on the facility. Wesley and Dr. Vasquez find themselves escaping together. Meanwhile, Amy's neighbor Cody had a run-in with one of the wolves. He shoots at it, and this wolf just randomly throws a couch through the front window. And which leads to him being exposed to moonlight and turning into a werewolf himself. Now, Amy and her daughter have to face off with Cody wearing that prestigious wolf killer flak jacket. Amy then calls Wesley to let him know what's going on. Wesley, being distracted by the call, runs into a random ass bus that's operating for some reason. Now, Wesley and Dr. Vasquez have to run through the city fighting werewolves to get to Amy. Oh yeah, but fuck that bus driver and those passengers, because they didn't even check on them. They just hit them and ran. Anyway, Wesley makes it through the city after a few close calls with werewolves after being split from Dr. Vasquez. He makes it to the house to protect Amy and fights Cody in his badass wolf killer's flak jacket. End credits. Man, this movie was rough to get through, but I'll give it a 2 out of 5, only because they had a great idea. Even though it was horribly executed, I love the idea. So now I'll be moving on to the spoiler section to break down some of this. So there's too much stupid shit that happens in this movie for me to cover it all, but I'll address the ones that bother me the most. Starting with, the werewolves don't have a super sense of smell. Like, literally, you had Dr. Vasquez and Wesley laying under a car at one point, hiding from the werewolves. The werewolf leans down and his snout is literally right next to the both of them, and he can't smell them. A fucking human can smell somebody that goddamn close. But whatever. That's one thing. The second thing is the werewolves have selective super strength. It's like sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. For instance, at the end when Wolf Killer and Wesley fight, he decides that the only way to beat the Wolf Killer, Cody, is to become a werewolf himself. So he walks outside, turns into a werewolf. This is how he defeats him. But after that, Wesley Wolf tries to get into the house to kill Amy and her daughter. He walks to the front door, which is boarded up with wood, and he can't bust through it. He then walks around to the back of the house and busts through a brick fucking wall. Like, come on now. Let's get some consistency with the power levels here. Every film needs to do this. They need to set their character strength and stick to it. The third thing is, for some reason, the wolves are super slow. Humans can run faster than these damn wolves. Like, even when they're running on all fours, our characters get away like it's nothing. But I digress. So they used some CGI in there. It wasn't too bad. It was, a little bit above sci-fi level, but they used the CG at the wrong moment. Like, it was more like background shots and whatnot. And I think they could have saved some of those background animations, and they could have focused it on a more important scene or dynamic scene with the main werewolf baddies and the main fight scene. It's like, yeah. Because Because you can definitely tell when the werewolves move and fight that they on wires or that the costume is too stiff. Yeah, it's bad. I don't know whose decision this was, whether it was the cinematographer or the director, but these knockoff J.J. Abrams fucking lens flares need to get the fuck out of that movie, or at least need to be toned down times 10. Because literally they'll be having characters just talking simply, no action, no dramatic anything. They're just simply espousing exposition. And we have lens flares in the fucking frame. It makes zero sense. And not only do we have the lens flare, we have the random ass music that is coupled in with these scenes. Literally, we're having exposition dialogue between two characters, and you hear ding 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 ding. You know, it's music overstepping what they're saying. And then at one point, like during the lab scene, the head scientist is giving this kind of, not even giving a speech, he's more so giving the info about how the operations work and what they're doing to curtail the transformations. And we get this like rising music as if they're about to go into battle or some shit. It was so weird. And then the editing in this shit, it was so bad. It was hard to focus on anything. The fight scenes were all over the place. Characters are giving weird introductions with the editing. It's so weird. It felt like I was watching an extended trailer watching this movie. And it didn't help that I was in the theater and everything looked washed out on top of that. At least the theater I was in, it wasn't like it was in, it didn't even look like it was in HD. It looked like a low budget student film in the theater. So that didn't even help. And then we have probably one of my biggest pet peeves about this movie is the campiness. Like the film wanted to take itself serious at one point, but then it wants to lean into campiness. For instance, we have werewolves trying to get it into Amy's house, and they're literally putting their hands over cameras to destroy them and shit. It's the weirdest fucking thing. And that's another thing. The werewolves keep their cognitive abilities, so they're not like raging animals all the time. They're, hey, you know what? I know what a camera is. I know what an electrified fence is. You know, at one point, Cody kills the babysitter who came to Amy for help. And after he kills her, he picks her body up and puts it on the electrified fence to deactivate it. Like, huh? What are we fucking talking about here? And then there's another part where they're walking through this mall trying to get through to actually get to Amy's house, and they're walking, and as they're walking, you can see in the background, you know, they do the wide shot showing the creature coming down. So this werewolf comes down doing a one-arm pull-up, but in reverse, like lowering himself from a one-arm pull-up position. It's the campiest shit you've ever seen in the movie. And then you have a scene where Dr. Vasquez has a growl off with an emo werewolf. And this is after the werewolf punches her. So we have that in this movie as well. The werewolf punches people in the stomach. And at one point, I think one of the werewolves punched Frank in the face. Actually, the one that came down with the pull-up. Not to mention, we also have characters making dumbass decisions. You have Dr. Vasquez narrowly escaping werewolves and running to their getaway car as Wesley's inside operating the car. She decides, instead of getting in the car and taking off, she decides to sit outside the car with the door open, looking in at Wesley, and start telling him how she's thankful that they made it this far and this and that. And it was so awkward, and you could tell this was a death scene. It was one of those, okay, we're staying on this scene a little too long. We know she's about to die. And then a werewolf arm grabs her and lifts her up. Mind you couldn't even hear this werewolf like land on the car or anything, but it's randomly up there. Frank does a little, I'm sad, and drives the fuck on, like, and forgets about her the rest of the movie. And during some of the sequences, they cut to the werewolves running, and it looks so bad. And that's another thing. They reused a lot of shots in this movie, and that's one of them that they reuse a lot, is the werewolves running. So it's like the werewolves are running, and it's angled up at the sky, at the dark sky, so you can't tell if they're running in the same neighborhood or if it's another. I get it. It's a low budget and you got to make do, but maybe cut down on some of the scenes that you're trying to do here and all the shit, and confine it to a little tighter space. And then we have probably one of the dumbest, it's not really campy, but it's a dumb scene. So let me set the scene. Wesley has just finished fighting Cody the Wolf Killer, both as werewolves. Wesley then turns to come back and attack Amy. Amy can hear him trying to get in. He can't get in through this wood window for some reason. Then he goes around, and as he's walking around the house, Amy picks up the shotgun that she used. She spent all the shells earlier shooting holes through the wall, and she finds one shell left. So she loads it, and at this point, Wesley breaks in through the brick door in the back. Now they're face to face. She's begging him to remember his family and all that stuff. So she's showing them pictures and blah, blah, blah. Mind you, prior to Wesley turning into a werewolf, he told Amy that it was only 15 minutes till sunrise. By the time Wesley enters the house as a werewolf and is facing off with Amy, it's minutes until sunrise. So it's like maybe a minute. So they're face to face. She's begging him to remember who he is, blah, blah, blah. The timer that they set goes off, and instead of her shooting Wesley, she shoots a hole in the wall. The sunshine hits him, and off screen, he turns back into a human. This movie was so bad. They hug, and it was end credits, literally. So yeah, that was the movie. Thanks for watching. Like, dislike, subscribe.